Hi, this is Andrea Del Priori, and I'd like to share with you some tips for managers. So there are a lot of great tips and advice out there, but what I'd like to focus on today are some tips from my personal experiences. I've worked in a lot of industries and I've worked for a lot of managers, and unfortunately, I would classify them under needs improvement. So I have some 6 quick tips that I would like to share. Number 1, honor one-on-one meetings. So unfortunately, I've had experiences with managers who did not show up for the one-on-one meetings on a consistent basis. And this is never a good feeling when you're sitting in the Zoom meeting and you're there for 15 minutes and no one shows up. It's not great for morale, and it's not great for trust or a healthy professional relationship. Also, not only physically show up, but be present, focus, and pay attention. So if you need to have the meeting at 8:30 a.m., if that's the only time when you're not receiving calls from the president or CEO, for example, that is fine. If you're having them too often, you can make them less frequent. It doesn't need to be every week. It could be once every 2 weeks or once a month. I've unfortunately also had the experiences where my manager, I can see that they are checking emails, they are texting on their cell phones, they're not present. And I had a manager who said, this is for you. So whatever you want to talk about, you need to talk about it and bring it up. But I'm waiting for them to pay attention. I could see the screens lighting on from their laptop that they're doing other work and they're not present. I've also had managers answering phone calls during the meeting, and I have to sit there and wait for them. If it's an emergency, that's perfectly fine. If it's, for example, your child's daycare, you need to attend to that, absolutely. But those kind of things shouldn't happen on a regular basis. Number 2, honor team meetings. So I have had managers who have absolutely 0 team meetings, none whatsoever. And my team actually was whispering to each other on a regular basis because our manager sat right next to us across the aisle. And there was so much confusion. We didn't have direction. We didn't have regular communication. So it's important to actually, number 1, have those team meetings. It could just be once a month or even less than that, depending how busy your department is and the needs of your people. Talk to people. So we've used team chats in the past where my manager would write literal paragraphs in the Teams chat rather than getting up and going over and talking to the team face to face. So I am more of an email person myself. I am introverted. I love the written word. However, I do acknowledge and respect that I need to talk to people face to face, and dealing with managers who have trouble talking to people face to face about work and projects and giving direction definitely hurts communication and causes a lot of confusion. Also, during team meetings, managers should let other people talk. So I have worked with managers who were very domineering and spoke the entire team meeting, every team meeting. And this, in my experience, was an everyday morning meeting where it was a little bit silly. We were texting each other about, questions we had and other concerns we had, while my manager would just go on and on and on in these meetings. So it's important to give people a platform to speak and to ask their questions. And also, if there are certain people on the team who talk a lot, you want to make sure that you keep them in check and let the quiet folks have a chance to speak as well. So whether you're giving people 1 to 2 minutes to speak, or if you're starting with a different person each meeting, make sure that you're giving people an opportunity to voice their concerns. Number 3, don't get too personal. So one part of that is please don't ask me personal questions. So I remember when I was pregnant at work, my manager would ask me, how did your doctor's appointment go? And maybe that's an okay question. I let her know that it went well, but then she followed up with, oh, was it the glucose screening? And this, number one, was uncomfortable and awkward. And then number two was also in front of my colleagues as well. So it was inappropriate. I know this is typically a joyful time in someone's life if they're expecting. However, you never know what that person's going through. You never know what kind of situation is going to come up. And then with this same manager, during a meeting, she actually announced to the other people in the meeting that I was expecting. So again, this could be joyful news in her mind. However, me being a private person and also this being a medical topic, I was completely flabbergasted and I could not believe that she shared that information during a meeting. It's my story, and if I want to share that with certain people, I would. So that was definitely inappropriate, in my opinion. Also, don't unload your baggage. So, for example, I had a manager who did not want to talk to us about work. She didn't have any team meetings. However, she would just start talking to us about her child, how her child's wetting the bed, and then she would tell us how her sibling has a lump on a certain private area, things that I just did not want to know. And of course, I empathized with that manager. And of course, working together, we are all humans and we want to share some personal things, but it was just way too much oversharing. And as a manager, you need to understand that you are in a position of authority and people feel an obligation to sit there and listen to you and to show reverence and respect. So it's not necessarily that people are enjoying hearing all of this, but they're just trying to stay on your good side. So that's something important. You want to balance at work between being professional and oversharing. Find a happy medium. Number 4, don't make assumptions about young employees. So I've had a lot of experiences where managers would say to me, oh, you wouldn't understand because you're young. You don't need to worry about that because you're young. Young people can have a wealth of experiences and hardships. So I worked with a manager and sadly her father was declining and eventually passed away. And she chalked it up to me not being able to understand these type of things. However, my stepfather passed away. I had a friend from high school pass away. My aunt passed away. My grandmother passed away. I had some experience with it. Not that I wanted to share all of that, and I didn't share all of that because in the workplace I didn't feel comfortable. However, when people would say, you have no idea what I'm going through, it was just hurtful and insulting. So don't assume that young people have no problems, because young people might have similar issues. They might have all kinds of health problems as well. So don't make assumptions that young people are healthy and have perfect lives. I've also been told by my manager to keep smiling, which I found to be kind of degrading, especially since I had just earned my master's degree and I was looking for opportunities, and I'm a very ambitious person. So this kind of ties into being young, I think, and I found it to be kind of rude. So if your employee is smiling, I would think that's a good thing. You wouldn't need to kind of tell them, keep smiling. Number 5, address issues promptly and of course discreetly. My specific example had to do with an organization which was very business formal. So the dress code was very formal. The men always wore suits and ties. And I guess after some time, I started to get a little bit more comfortable and I was dressing a little bit more business casual. So shame on me, especially as an HR person. I'm setting an example and I should have known better. Yes. So the president or the vice president of the HR department had spoken to my manager and about my dress code. And my manager was tasked with talking to me about it. Well, unfortunately, she didn't talk to me about it for over a month. So this was going on. I knew something was up because I felt that people were talking about me, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And this was something so simple for me that I could have easily fixed. So by the time that my manager finally talked to me and let me know what was going on, I was a little bit upset because clearly people had been talking about me for a few weeks, and this is something that I could have easily rectified. So you definitely don't want to let issues stagnate and fester. You want to nip it in the bud. Last but not least, number 6. If you are trying to organize a lunch outing where the company is not paying for it, you are not paying for it, make sure that people feel comfortable saying, no, I can't make it, and make it acceptable to refuse. The same thing goes for things like happy hour, going out after work. Make these optional. So for me, especially when I'm working in the office, my break time is sacred. I step away, I get some peace and quiet. Sometimes I have to call and make appointments. Sometimes I have to call my family members and attend to different things in my life. So when there's a lot of pressure to go to lunch with the team and spend money, it can be very awkward and uncomfortable. And again, managers need to understand that you are in a position of authority. People want to please you and people want you to like them so that you do well in your department and within the organization. So with that being said, put yourself in other people's shoes and understand that some people do bring lunch every day. I know I do. It helps me to meet my financial objectives and meet my savings goals. It's a wise choice to make. Not everyone wants to buy lunch every day. Once in a while, it can be very nice, but it's a fine line where you want to make sure that people can say no. I hope you have found this helpful. Please stay tuned for more tips and advice. Thank you so much for your time and for listening.